G'day everyone and welcome to our CSER remote learning webinar number 4, Authentic Assessments with Microsoft Forms. My name is Troy Waller. I am the Learning Delivery Specialist from Microsoft. So I have the great job of flying around the country, well usually, flying around the country and sharing all the cool things that you can do with Microsoft. Obviously in this, well at least in the classroom. So at least in this context now, looking at remote learning, we're in a really good position to be able to use a lot of these tools online to make a real difference to our students, and especially, you know, considering that we can't be face to face with them. What I really like about this tool, this is Microsoft Forms, is I geek out with this one. I just think it is probably the most underrated tool in Office 365 in the educational context. But this is going to, in a normal time where we're with our kids, this is a great time-saving tool for you as a teacher in its ability to mark and also to collate the data that you collect from an assessment. But in a remote learning environment, it's a really good way to run formative assessments. So I hope you're going to get a lot out of it today. I'm going to share with you this slide here, aka.ms/Microsoft Remote Learning. Again, this is the jumping point for you to everything that Microsoft Australia have set up for you in a remote learning context. So please go and have a look at that. I'm going to invite Deb Kroger to come off mute now and introduce herself, but she is your CSER contact, and she will also tell you a little bit about this online guide to facilitate learning online. How are you, Deb?
Hi Troy, good, thank you. Yeah, so I'm from CSER, I'm a learning and technologies consultant, and if you've got any questions about stuff covered today from a CSER perspective, feel free to email me. And that link up there is to the online learning website that Catholic Education SA has put together, and in particular that part of the website has got information around online resources, remote learning, teams, etc. So hopefully that's a really handy, useful resource for you all. Thanks.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Deb. The other thing too is at the end of this webinar, we will share the links for you to access our pre-recorded webinars, the ones that have already happened. And I really do want to suggest that you go in there and have a look at our first 3 that we've already put up there. And then as we do more, they'll appear in that space as well. So feel free to bookmark it. But this is built on this webinar here. Whilst certainly there's a lot of standalone information, it is built on the premise that you've done these other ones as well. So if you do feel a little bit lost by this, feel free to go back and explore those webinars. And more than that, share them with your colleagues, please, because it's really important that they know this as well. The other person I've got here with me today is Anna from the Microsoft store in Sydney. She's dialing in from Sydney. I'm dialing in from Melbourne. Deb's in Adelaide. So we're really putting this whole remote learning and remote access to the test today. But Anna, because of the closure of the store up there, she's been redeployed to support us. So I'm going to let her say hello and tell you a little bit about the Q&A. She's going to tell you how that works.
Hi everybody, so Anna from Microsoft flagship store here. So yeah, if you have any questions during Troy's session, please do feel free to pop them in the Q&A section and I will do my best to answer. If it's a common question, then I might publish it. But yeah, there you go.
Excellent. So yeah, so Anna will answer the questions the best she can. From time to time, we're going to get her to feed me some questions. This is a little bit different to our other webinars because there's so much that I want to get through. I'm going to hold pretty much all the Q&A until the end. There might be a couple of times here and there I'll stop, but largely we're going to hold it to the end. And Anna knows that we're just going to field questions today specifically about forms and using forms in the way that we've seen it done today. Now I'm just going to get rid of that little button there because that annoys me. All right, so let's have a look at our webinar and look at what it is that we're going to do. So we're going to first look at the Microsoft Educator community, which is your online portal. Then we're going to teach you how to use forms to create an assessment, how to use forms to check the results. We'll look at settings and sharing, forms in PowerPoint, forms in Stream, forms in OneNote, and forms in Teams. So the cool thing about Microsoft as a platform is we have an ecosystem and we try very much or very hard to integrate everything. So you may look at something like forms and say, oh, it's limited in its ability to carry out task A. But then when we mix it in with PowerPoint, you may find that it does task A really, really well, or task B will be, you know, set up through Stream, or a combination of all three, a combination of all four. And then bringing it into that Teams environment, you're going to see it does some really, really cool stuff. Then we'll do next steps. I'll tell you where to go. And then, as I said, we'll have some time for Q&A. So I want to remind you of the Microsoft Educator Center, education.microsoft.com. I'm not going to take you to the website today. We've done that in our first 3 webinars, but please go in there and have a look at the courses that are there for you as educators. Remember, because they meet the AITSL standards, they are recognised by the South Australian TRB, which means that the time that you spend in here doing these courses does count as your PD requirements. And I know when I do when I do workshops, face-to-face workshops in Adelaide, people are constantly asking me for the certificates, and I've got to get my hours up for the TRB and all this kind of thing. Well, the great thing about this is that you can get your hours up without going anywhere. Okay, just make sure that you sign in, use your school email address and password to create an account, and then it will keep that record for you. If you get audited, then you can throw that that audit sheet their way. All right, so you can explore courses in there, which is learning how to use Microsoft technology in your classroom in effective and engaging ways, while also earning your professional development hours. And then we have this thing called learning paths, which are groups of courses. So that focuses on skill development or Microsoft products in a learning path for deeper learning on that topic. And then you can also view your achievements, right? So it's gamified, so there's badges and points. But more than that, that training transcript means that you can show that to others. So when you come into office.com, which is where you log into Office 365, so this is Office through the browser, whether you're on Chrome, Firefox, Edge, you can come into Office and sign in using your school email address and school password. All right, so it's the same one that you would use for your email, and you know, the same one that hopefully you're going to use to sign up to our educator community. So it's quite convenient that it's all in the one space. So again, we come to Office, www.office.com, and then we sign in. Okay, and when you come in there, you can see here on your start page here, you've got your online apps. Remember, these are not the ones installed on your machine. These are your online apps. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually take you into the live version of office.com. So this is my office.com environment. Yours is going to look similar. Remember, you can change that if you want to make it prettier by coming in here to your themes. All right, and let's just change that one there. So you can make it, personalize it, and that's nice for the kids as well. Don't forget about that. But you can click here on forms. All right, and that's how we find forms. If you can't find forms on your start page, just click on all apps and it should appear for you there, or you can come up here to the app launcher, all right, which sits, those of you that are on Chrome, you'll see the Google one sits up here and your Office one sits here. But again, you'll find forms or click on all apps. All right, so let's jump into the online version of forms and let's talk about how we're going to create an assessment. So I'm going to come back here. So this is forms. When you come into forms for the first time, obviously you're not going to see a whole heap of forms or quizzes because you haven't created any yet. But we have 2 types of forms that we can create. One is a quiz. Quiz is what we're going to use mostly as educators because it will assess by marking where it has a definitive answer, and the question types that we use in a quiz, you're going to see really cool. But what a form does is a form is more just for collecting data, right, for surveys and things like that. So those of you that use SurveyMonkey, you might know that. Well, you know, that's how we can do that sort of thing working as forms. But when we want to create assessments, very American, I know, but they call them quizzes. All right, so we can create those by clicking on that. So what we would do is we click on new quiz, and that would create, and then we would start to create a quiz. It's really quite easy. All right, but instead, I want to show you one that I've already created rather than take you through that laborious process of creating one. And you can see here I've got all my questions which I have created already. All right, but if I want to see what that looks like to my students, I can come up here to preview and I can look at my assessment exactly as my students would see it. Now, sitting on a computer, it's going to look like this, but I can also see what it's going to look like on a mobile device, whether that's an iPad or a phone, and that'll give me a view. And I can also scroll through that and have a look at exactly how it looks. All right, but that's how it looks on my computer. It's just giving me a shortened version of that. It's not the full version, but when I come back in here, that's where I have my full version. All right, so that's the teacher view, and the preview is the student view. All right, now I'm going to come back out here into forms because I just want to show you quickly how easy it is to create a new form. I just click on new quiz like that. I give it a title. So I'm just going to pretend, and I'm just going to call this test 27. I'm going to pretend that means something to me. I can put a description in there if I want, and then I can start to create different questions, right? Now I'm going to take you through these quickly, and then I'll show you what they look like when we actually start to explore the one I've already built. So you have a choice question. Okay, and a choice question is multiple choice, and that could be 2 answers. For example, I could make that a true or false, or I could have it multiple answers, right? But then I also have the ability to have multiple choice, multiple answers, which means instead of having 1 correct answer, I can have 3 or 4 or even 5 correct answers as well. Another type of question I have is a text question. I can make that a short answer or a long answer question. Please remember that forms is not made to be doing essays. It's really, those answers are, 1-word sentences, maybe a paragraph, but really not too much beyond that. All right, so that's our text type. We've got ratings where I could rate something. We can set a date as well in there. We've got the ability to rank, and that's where I can order. So I could put a question in, I could put things out of order, and students have to put them into order. That's really nice when we're doing things like onset and rhyme or something like that, where we want them to match. It's a really good way of doing that. We can match things through ranking. You've got the ability to have a Likert question, which is a kind of survey, probably not really good for quizzes, but if we're creating a survey, it'll do some really good stuff at the back end in terms of collating that data. File upload. Again, we'll have another look, but that's where you would upload a file, right? So the students can actually submit a file, whether that's a Word document or a PowerPoint document or Excel document. They can upload that as their answer. And then you've also got what's called a Net Promoter Score, which is, again, another type of survey question. All right, so that's how we create it. It's really, really easy. But as I said, I want to take you in and show you this one that I've created. So you can see here, the first one that I've done is I've actually made the students enter their date of birth, right? So in that, when they try to answer the question, then it actually brings up the date for them. I'll show you what I mean. It brings up that, and they can enter their date of birth, but it could be anything, right? We could the date you started school or some other date that's relevant to them. All right, so that's a date question. Now, what I've done here is I've created, just using the choice question, I've created a true or false. All right, and then what I've done here, you have a look when I show you the back end here. I have decided which one is the correct answer, right? So I could make that false as the correct answer. In this case, it's true. I have the ability as well to look here, display a message to respondents who select this answer, so I can give them immediate feedback. So, for example, if they got that false, they decided it was false when it was actually true, I could actually put here that the false thing says, please see pages 23 to 45 of your textbook. Now, I don't have to do that, but I can give them immediate feedback to that. So, when you're doing a formative assessment, that might be the right thing to do, but in this kind of context, it may not be. All right, the other one is we've got multiple choice, single answer. All right, so you can see here that I've just got one of them is the correct answer, but then down here we've got another one which is multiple choice, multiple answers. So I just ticked the multiple choice, multiple answers here, and then you can see here that these 3 answers are correct and this one is wrong. All right, so that's multiple choice, multiple answer. Now this is the ordering question. All right, so you can see here that when students come into that question, they're actually able to drag their answers, or they can use a little arrows to move it up and down. But you can see here I've asked them to order it alphabetically, but it could be any sort of order. The other thing that I've got here in terms of question types is the short answer. And you can see here I've just got a 1-word answer. So this food is very popular in England, what and chips. So obviously the answer is fish, and I've already said there that the answer is fish. But I could add other answers as well in case there is potential for multiple answers. So they might say pie and chips or something like that. I could put multiple answers so that there's multiple options for the student. I've also got a long answer question, so you can see here I've asked for 25 words or less. Put your answer in there. This is that rating question I talked about before, maybe not so much in a quiz, but that's available to you. And you can also see I've got maths questions as well. So a maths question can be set up, and I'll take you through a little bit of that a little bit later. But you can see when I set up a maths question, I've put in an equation here, and then it actually has solved the equation and given me options. Okay, so I'm going to say, actually, I'm going to add that one in, and I'm going to say that this is my correct answer over here. All right, but it's actually not, is it? So I'll go back up here and change it to that one. And so it'll actually solve it for you and give you the solutions, which is actually really cool. All right, now I'll just show you exactly what I mean, because I realize I'm probably not making a whole heap of sense. So I'm going to put in a question here, and you can see it's already giving me suggestions, right? But it's going to be a choice question, and I'm going to say solve this equation. All right, solve this equation, and then I can enter the equation. What happens is I get this open up here, right? So I might say 5x plus 3x equals, all right, and then I'm going to say that that's actually 99, all right, and then I say okay. Now what happens is, look at this, it actually gives me the correct answer here, right? So I could add all of them, all right, and it's already said that this one is the correct one, and then I want to make sure that I shuffle my options. Okay, so I shuffle my options in there. And then they will be random, those answers, so it's not always the first one that comes up. All right, so you can see how easy it is to do that. Now you're probably looking at that and going, okay, multiple choice for maths, not the best. Wait till I show you all the cool things you can do in with OneNote. But anyway, I'm going to get rid of that question because that's just one of our play around ones. Now you can see here that with the upload question, it asks them to upload their data as a spreadsheet. I can say how many files they can upload and the file size. All right, so you can see it actually can be up to 1 gigabyte, which is amazing. And then I can choose to let them upload a Word file, an Excel file, a PowerPoint, a PDF, an image, a video, and audio. When you think about things like video and audio, I mean, really you could be using this for so many different kinds of assessments. Now, the other thing that I've got, you've noticed up here that I've actually embedded, when I click on this question here, I've actually embedded a video. All right, which is really easy to do. And you can see here, this one I've actually embedded a picture. So what I would do is, if I was creating a question, let me just come down here and create one down here. So I'm going to add a new question. I'm going to turn this into, let's say, a multiple choice, right? And then I get the option just right here. This is where I would throw in my YouTube link or my stream link, or my images, etc. All right, so that's how we add pictures, etc. The other thing you can see is that I've chosen here to put a required button on, which means that they must answer this question or they can't submit the test. So if there's, if you want to make sure that the kids have a go at everything, then you just make sure that these all have the, let me click on this one, they all have the required button clicked there. All right, now in terms of the ellipses, you can add branching, which we'll go back and have a look at in a minute, but you can also, turn it into a maths question and that kind of thing. So really, really very cool. That's what we do to create the assessment. Now, in terms of checking our results, right? So when we get those results, we need to look at how we can show the responses and all the stuff that we can do with those results. So let's go back in, because I want to show you what happens here. When I've created this quiz, I'm going to come back up to question number 1, which is date of birth. Now, can you see how I'm able to assign points, right? Now, in this type of assessment, I'm not necessarily going to give them a point for getting their date of birth right. But when we come down to this question here, you can see I've assigned this to be worth 1 point, right? So true or false, do they get it right? Yes, it's worth 1 point. And I can weight this, depending on how much I want to weight it. You come down here to a question like this, is 25 words or less. I've actually made this worth 5 points, okay? Now what's happening here is the students are forced to sign into this quiz, right? And I'll show you how to set that up later. But when they sign in, it's automatically recording their name. And then basically any question that has a definitive answer is auto-graded, right? So because I've given it a definitive answer, right? Here we know it's fish, here we know it's this order, here we know it's these 3 questions, it will mark it. But when it comes to this question here, 25 words or less, the computer is unable to mark that, right? And we as teachers, we want to be able to mark that with some, nuance and complexity, right? So we actually have to mark that ourselves, right? So I'll show you how to do that. Actually, I'll show you how to do that right now. So when I come over here to my responses, the first thing that I see is I see a snapshot of my entire class. 7 responses, the average score is 19.3, the status is active, okay, which means that my assessment is live, all right? And you can see down here, I've got a bit of a bird's eye view, a whole class view of that assessment data, all right? So it's showing me what my students as a cohort have done. So as a teacher, I could look at this knowing that really my students have not grasped that concept, or over here, most of my students have grasped that concept. So I can look at that and what I need to reteach, what I need to readdress and what I don't. All right, so that's one of the cool things that we can look at first. So that's our whole class responses. But then when I want to go into individual students, actually, before I show that, I'll just show you that I can also look, for example, at all my students' answers over here, just for that question. Okay, but when I come into review answers over here, what it does is it actually brings me in to all my students, but one at a time. All right, so I can look at Stephen's here. Now you can see that this has already been auto-graded, right? That's what I said I was going to show you. So that's correct. So it's given him a point. That's correct. It's given him a point. That's correct. It's given him a point, etc. Now down here, what happens is I've already marked this, but if I get rid of that score, you can see this now needs review. So anything that needs review will actually come up, right, and show me that it needs review. So I'm going to read his question and say, I have nothing to say here, I'm just typing. Actually not so good, so I'm going to give him a point. All right, and then I come down to my any other areas that need review, all right, which is none, fine, and then I go to my next student, all right, and I could give my students feedback on each individual question. So if he gets that right, I could give him feedback. If he gets that right or wrong, I could give him feedback. I can also give him feedback across the entire quiz. So that's the field there to give feedback for the entire quiz. All right, so as I go through, I can look at each one of my students. All right, now I know that in this quiz, the only one I need to really look at is down here, this 25 words or less one. All right, so I can actually mark that and then go to the next student and mark it and go to the next student. I don't have to be going up and looking for the students. It just takes me one student to the next one. All right, so that's how I review answers, and that's how I give them feedback. Now you think about this, if this was a pen and paper test, and you gave it to your students, right? Let's say, remote access, you mailed it, or even if we were back in class, you would have to then individually mark each one of those questions. Even though it's a really simple process, it's laborious, right? And it takes a lot of time. If we put it into forms, the form will automatically assess that for us and mark absolutely everything it can. So it saves you a whole lot of time. All right, and then what I do when I'm finished, I'm going to come back into my answers here. I might be ready to post the scores. So everyone will get a notification telling them their score. All right. Now, the other thing that we can do, and this is another time saver, you think about it, you'd get all those pen and paper tests, you would collate those answers and those scores, and then you have to pop it into an Excel spreadsheet because, you have to display those answers, that learning or those results to someone in the school, etc. Look what happens now when I click open in Excel. As soon as the kids have all finished the test, it creates an Excel document for me with the data. But look at this. It's not only brought them in the order that they've actually finished, it shows me their start time and their completion time, right? So that's data that I would never have had if I'd not done this online. But nevertheless, it creates, it records that for me. Their email address, because I've made them sign in, and we'll again talk about that a little bit later, it records their name and their total point score, right? It also records all the feedback I give them. Remember, this was the quiz feedback, so the entire feedback. it will record it here, but it will also record, look at these questions here. It will also record for each question, it will record their answer, the number of points, and if I gave them feedback to that question, it will record that as well. So it's actually recording far more data than we ever would if we were just grabbing those results and creating a spreadsheet and throwing in their, you know, their score out of 20. So you can see here that so much data is there. I don't actually need to carry all that all those, you know, test papers anymore. It's all sitting there in a nice little convenient Excel spreadsheet. All right, so you do need to wait until all the kids are finished before that Excel spreadsheet. You can download it, but it won't be complete. So as soon as they're all finished, then you can open up that Excel spreadsheet. So that's how we check our results. All right, now let's look at our settings. Okay, so I want to show you some of the cool things that you can do. So when I'm inside a form, all right, I can set my theme. Okay, so there's a whole heap of theme ideas that they've given you, some basics. I can also upload a graphic if I wanted, and you know, it could be the school logo or something to do with, you know, PE or whatever it is that I'm using for this assignment. Oh, sorry, for this assessment. Now, when I'm looking at my settings features, excuse me, when I'm looking at my settings features, I click on the ellipses up here and come down to settings. Now, here are some of the options I can do. Do I want to show the results automatically? That is, the kids finish and they automatically get told their results. Maybe not, because I don't want them sharing the answers with kids that haven't yet done the assessment. All right. Do I want to make this available to anyone with the link? That is, they can sign in anonymously, or only people in my organisation can respond. That means that they must sign in with their school email address and password. And if they do that, it will record their name, right, which we saw in our back end sheet. We also, the Excel spreadsheet. The other thing is it will, we can set it to 1 response per person, right? So if we say that, they can only do it 1 time. If we check it, they can do it multiple times, but each attempt will have the records of their attempt at that assessment. Do we want to accept responses? That is basically turning the quiz on and off. Do we want to make it available? We can set it as a start with a start date and an end date to make sure they do it before the end of the week. We can shuffle the questions so that they're random, and we can also create a custom thank you message. So at the end we say, you know, good job, Fred, because they'll use their name. Do we want to send them an email receipt every time that they complete, when they complete it? And also, do I want to get notifications every time it's completed? All right, so that's what we do there for sharing, or sorry, excuse me, for settings. Now, in terms of sharing, there are different ways that we can share. So the first thing is, do we want to, we've done this already, do we want to make it for only people in my organisation, or do we want to make it random, anonymous? Anonymous is good when we're doing surveys and we're trying to access parents, etc. But for students, we pretty much want them to sign in every time. We can create a link, okay, and then that link can be copied and emailed to them, or we can also create a QR code, right? And you can download that and paste it onto a OneNote page or whatever it is you want to do, send it out by email, and students can click on the QR code and it will take them to the assessment. You can create an embed code if you wanted to put it into some other tool, and you can also send it directly by email. Now, in terms of this one here, sharing as a template, I may want to send this to another teacher because it's a great quiz, a great assessment. They're going to use it, but I don't want them to play with my original. So I can create a copy, link, share that with them, and then they can download this into their version of forms, and then it has a life of its own. So as they make changes, it's not going to affect my original. But if I do want to collaborate directly, I can share to collaborate. And so sharing to collaborate means that if I invite someone into this, they're actually making changes to my original, different to a template, which they it gets a life of its own and they can do what they want with it. This is where I share to collaborate. So I might say to a teacher, hey, I'll do questions, you know, for unit 1, questions 1 to 5. You do the questions for unit 2, you know, questions 6 to 12, etc. All right. So that's how we share to collect responses. That's how we share it as a template, and that's how we share to collaborate. Now, another thing I want to share with you is what's called branching. All right, so branching, and you can see one of my questions here. Let's come down to this one here. All right, so I've got this question here, and what happens here is if they get the question right, all right, I want to add branching. So if they get the question right, then it automatically takes them to the next question, right? Office 365 Pro Plus can be installed on your laptop. True, they say they go to question 3. But if they get it wrong, it takes them to question 11. Now let's have a look what question 11 looks like. What I've done for question 11 is they watch a video all about Office 365 Pro Plus, and then what happens is they're asked the question again. So what you can do with branching is really way cool. Let me just come back up here. So what we can do with branching is we can make the test get harder or easier. All right, so you can see here, if they get the question right, they keep going. If they get the question wrong, they go somewhere else. So I could make, if they get it right, they go to a harder question. If they get it wrong, they go to an easier question. Or if they get it wrong, I can take them to another question which drills down into why they didn't understand and what they didn't understand. All right, so this has changed a little bit since last time I saw it, but you can see down here that when they get to question number 10, it takes them right to the end of the form. So students that get that question 2 right will never see question 11. But anyway, you can get in and have a bit of a play and explore that yourself. So that's branching. So I've pretty much shown you everything that sort of goes on at the back end of forms. All right, so now I want to share with you about some of the cool things you can do with forms and other tools. So the first thing to show you is what you can do with PowerPoint. So what I'm going to have to do to show you what you can do with PowerPoint is I'm going to grab my PowerPoint tool here. I'm going to drag it into your screen so you can see that with me. All right, now look what I've done here. I've created this is the back end of the PowerPoint presentation that we're looking at here. And when I come to this one here, this blank slide, I can click on Insert, and then you can see there's forms over here. Now what happens is it opens up a forms dialog box, which looks at all the forms that are in my Office 365 space. All right, and then I can decide which one do I want it to be. I want it to be this Office 365 summative. I'm going to throw that in there, and it starts to load that up into my PowerPoint presentation. All right, so give it a moment. So there it is. So that's actually now sitting inside my PowerPoint presentation. So if I go back into my PowerPoint presentation for you, you can see there it is. So if I was to, and you can completely do that full quiz from inside PowerPoint. So if I built a PowerPoint deck which is explaining, you know, everything wonderful about the subject that I'm doing at the moment, and then partway through that, the kids actually, when they're viewing the PowerPoint, they actually get a quiz that they're expected to do, and all that data is not being saved in PowerPoint, it's being saved in forms and everything that we just saw, but they can access it there through that PowerPoint presentation, which is, you got to admit, pretty cool. Okay, so that's how we do it inside PowerPoint. Now you may, and before I jump on, I might say, you may be asking, why does my version of forms, of PowerPoint not show the insert form button, right? Now remember what I did? I was up here, I went into insert and I came over here to forms and I pushed that button and it all opened. If you're not seeing that, that's because you need to be downloading the latest, greatest version of Office 365. So we go to office.com, we click install Office and Office 365 apps. If you're using an older version of Office, you're not going to see the ability to insert forms. All right, so let's have a look at how we would also insert a form into a OneNote page. It's really very easy. So if you're inside OneNote and you want to insert a form, look what happens. I'm up here on insert and there's my forms button over there. So I click on the forms button. It creates for me a dialog box which is going to show all my forms, and then all I have to do is insert my form like that. The other thing I can do is when I'm sharing my form, well, when I'm in the share dialog, I should say, of actual forms, when I'm in here, click on share and create a copy. All right, so I create a copy of that link. When I come back in here and I'm going to add a new page, all I have to do is paste my form link and bang, there it is as well. All right, so what that means now is, whilst I have, whilst I have this assessment, which is like if we look down here at the maths question, all right, I want to see my students working out. So embedding this into OneNote means that they can actually be doing their working out over here. All right, so I can see their working out as well as them being able to input their question directly into forms. All right, so keep that in mind. You may be looking at the form and saying, oh, it's text-based and it doesn't let me see what they're working out. It doesn't have to be a maths question, it could be anything. If I want to see what they're actually doing, I can put it in a OneNote page, and they can be inking and typing and leaving video recordings and audio recordings, all kinds of things. All right, so that's what it looks like in OneNote. Now inside Teams, it's really cool. Inside Stream, it's really cool, because what Stream allows me to do, I'm going to jump back in here. Stream allows me to put, minimize that. Stream allows me to put my form into a video. Okay, so Stream lives again in Office 365. So here it is here, Stream. If you don't know much about Stream, it is your your video housing and curating tool inside Office 365. So think of it as like YouTube inside Office 365. Now you can see here I've got my content. So these are videos that I have created or uploaded or both. I'm going to click here on my videos. And I'm going to come into our last webinar, which is the recording that we've made. It's available to me in Stream. Now look what happens with Stream. Stream's created a transcript of the audio of that video. I mean, it just does some amazing stuff. But when I come into interactivity, it allows me to add a form to my video. So I want you to imagine that I'm going to come to this point in the video. Let's imagine that we've actually watched that, played it, listened to it. Great. And I want to ask them a question. So I'm going to add a form. Okay, now I will need that link right from here. So I just grab that copy link, which I've got already. Come back into Stream. I'm going to paste that link in there, and I'm going to say that this is my Office 365 summative assessment. All right, and then I add it to the timeline. So I've queued it up here, or I could put the time in if I already know it. Same one, 2401. I'm going to add it to the timeline. Now what happens is it's embedded the Office 365 form inside there. If I come back a little bit, I'm just going to come back a little bit earlier in the video, and we're at 2401. So we're not going to wait that long. I'm just going to drag it forward a little bit. So if we were watching that video, all right, we're 2332. So I want you to imagine that we're watching the video, and then we come to that point, and look what happens. Form starts to load, and bang, there's that assessment sitting inside the video. So the students are watching the video, learning all about it. Bang, here comes this quiz. Now, the cool thing about this is we can use it in a lot of different ways. All right, we could use it to assess what they've done so far. We could put it in there in a sneaky way to make sure that they've actually watched the video, because if they don't complete this, then we know that they've not watched the video. So we could put it in different points, asking questions. The kids think we're actually asking them questions, but about the content, but we're actually just making sure that they've watched the video. Or, as I said, we could actually ask them genuine questions about the video, and then we know what they're taking in and what they're not. So you decide as a teacher how you're going to use this. But as soon as they finish doing the quiz, you can see it's just like we saw it in OneNote, or just like we saw it in the actual Forms app. They continue the video, and the video continues. All right, so that's how we use that inside Stream. So really very powerful. So videos in PowerPoint. Forms in PowerPoint, forms in videos. Now let's have a look at what we can do inside Teams. So if you haven't already done our first webinar around using Teams, please go back and explore that. But I do want to show you some of the cool things that you can do inside Teams. So I'm going to open up a team that I'm already a member of. One of the first things we can do is we can just embed our forms inside our class, right? So I can just click on this one here. I can click on Forms. It brings up that form dialog box. I can create a new one, or I'm going to add an existing form, which is this one here. What do I want to do? I want to make it so that people can collect responses, or do I want it to be able to show results? Now, collect responses means that people do the quiz. Show results means I may want to share that with teachers who want to see the back end of that, so we can collaborate. But nevertheless, I'm just going to put that in there. And now it's just a tab across the top of my class team. All right. Now, the other thing too, if I come back to posts, you can see it's also a link down in the chat. All right. So that's a really cool way, showing forms as a tab. Now, forms as assignments inside Teams. I promised in the first webinar that we'd come back to look at how we could use forms. So when I click on the assignments tab, and again, go back and watch the video on how to use assignments, you'll see that for yourself. But when I create an assessment, if I create it as a quiz, it will allow me, and in this case, it's the Office 365 assessment, okay? Or I could create a new one, as you can see there. All right, and now it actually sets it up as an assignment. Okay, so it's now integrating with the assignment features, which means that students can input, complete that with inside Teams, and it will come in to the grades and the insights tab as well. So I'll show you that in a minute, but you can see here I can add categories, I can add instructions, I can add resources, so there may be videos I want them to watch, or you know, look at a OneNote page before they do this quiz, etc. All right, but if you come up here to my grade book, you can see here that my Office 365 summative quiz sits here, so I can actually see who's submitted it, their results, etc. It integrates really, really nice. And then I can also use the Insights tab, which will show me other insights in terms of their grades and assignments, and that's going to integrate really well with forms as well. But please go back and explore what I showed you in that first video. All right, so remembering we can use Teams and forms together with a tab. We can use it in the assignments feature, but remember too, I can also bring in forms inside Stream. I can bring forms inside OneNote, inside Teams, right? So it's that whole ecosystem integration, which is way, way cool. So I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop because I've bombarded you with a whole heap of information. Remember, this video is a reference for you to go back and download afterwards and use this to go through and learn for yourself. But I'm going to open up for Q&A, and I hope no one really hits me with too many hard questions today as they did more recently. But I will say we're going to keep the questions to just forms questions today.
Yep, sure. We have a few of them. You touched on this one actually a little bit, but Kathy, can I create assessment forms and save them until I need to release them?
Definitely, yes, because it's all about sharing, right? So when you create a form, students don't have access to it until you share that link with them, right? Or until you post it into OneNote or PowerPoint or even into the Teams. When you create an assignment inside Teams, you can create an assignment and save it. There's a little assign button, and I'll show you what I mean. So when I create an assignment in Teams, let's create a new one. Let's create that as a, oh, sorry, wrong one. Apologies for that. So when I create an assignment, whether it's a forms assignment or whether it's a normal type of assignment, I have the ability to save it when it's ready to go. That is, the students don't have it, but it's ready to go, or I can assign it, and then that means the students will be notified and it's made available to them.
Wonderful. We only have one more question at the moment. So this is regarding branching in forms. Is it the same way it works on NAPLAN?
Yeah, it's similar. It's similar, but obviously the NAPLAN one's going to be a little bit more complex, and you know it's got a much greater algorithm. But yes, you manually set it up that if the student gets the question right, you can decide where they go, whatever the answer that they give. So if they get it right, you send them to a harder question. If they get it wrong, you send them to an easier question. So and that's what NAPLAN does.
Alrighty, we got another question came in. When you post scores, do the students receive an email advising them of their results?
If you do it inside Teams, then they will receive a Teams notification. But if you're doing it outside of Teams, then yes, they'll get an email through Forms.
And that's it for now.
All right, excellent. So let's talk about where we go from here. First of all, that education.microsoft.com website that I told you about, there's a course there called Microsoft Forms Creating Authentic Assessments. There's some really good stuff in there, so go ahead and use that as a reference. Also, steer your friends towards it, and remembering anyone who does that course will actually get recognition with the TRB. The other thing I want to steer you to is the Forms Help and Learning page. So support.office.com/forms, support.office.com/forms. This is your go-to. So you can come up here and type your questions in, or you might want to look at how do I get started, right? And there'll be a whole heap of articles around there. Sharing and collaboration, there's articles around how to use forms. The integration, this is where you go to look at how do I use it in OneNote? How do I use it in PowerPoint? How do I use it in Teams, etc. All right, so this is your, the answers portal for forms, and again, support.office.com/forms. The other thing to remember is that CSER has this online learning portal for you with information, etc. So please go there and visit for information, and you can also reach out to Deb if you want. Now, here's the one I was thinking is most important for you, which is getting today's slides and recordings, and also getting our previous slides and recordings. So you open up your browser and you go to aka.ms/CSER webinars, and you can download the slides as well as the videos. All right, so the video for this will be there in about an hour's time, maybe a little bit less, so you can come back and hunt through that, but also get the Teams webinar, our first one, and any of the others that stand out to you. Remembering aka.ms/Microsoft Remote Learning is there for you. Also, if you're on Twitter, please connect with Microsoft Education. MSAU.edu is our Twitter handle. And if you want support documentation beyond forms, remember support.microsoft.com/education, and there's some really good information there for you. And there's also some really good stuff around using forms in an educational context that isn't in that other one that I showed you before. So please go in and check that out. Our newsletter is here, aka.ms/MEC newsletter. So go ahead and sign up for that. And if you want to connect with me, I exist quite often, probably too much, on Twitter, LinkedIn and Facebook. This is purely my professional accounts, so you are welcome to come in there and ask me questions, or follow me, and I'll post the latest, greatest stuff around Microsoft Education. All right, so that's it. We've come to the end. I do want to stress again how much I think that this is a really, really powerful tool, and it's very good for using for assessments in a remote learning context. All right, so please share this out with your friends. Deb, is there anything you want to say before we take off?
No, I think that covered it all. Thanks, Troy.
Okay, no worries. All right, everyone. Well, thanks very much.
Troy?
Oh, yep.
Sorry, it's Anna. We got a few more questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, okay, Anna, maybe one more.
Yep. For younger students, can you record questions orally?
No, there's no recording yet, but there is the ability, and this is something that's way cool, is we have what's called Immersive Reader. If you've ever seen Immersive Reader, let's go into the preview function here. Immersive Reader lives inside Forms, okay? And we're gonna, when we do the inclusive classroom, we're gonna do this in depth, but Immersive Reader lives inside Forms, and what Immersive Reader will do is when a student comes to a question, you see this little icon appears over all the questions, it will actually read the question to the student. All right, so they have the ability to hit the play icon here. Now, I don't know if you guys can hear that. I don't know if I turn my sound on or not, but you can actually have that read to the student. So the answer to that is no to record, but yes to have an artificial intelligence come along and read it to the student. Okay, so that's it from us. Thanks very much for being a part of this. Any other questions we'll try and answer online before we completely hang up, but we'll see you at our next webinar coming up soon.